Jungkook and Jimin vanish from the studio without goodbye, leaving Taehyung to uncover a secret that changes everything. Jungkook's hand was already on the studio door when Taehyung shouted, "Don't you dare walk out like this." The door stopped moving. For 3 seconds, nobody breathed. The studio lights hummed overhead, throwing pale reflections across the polished floor. A half-finished track continued playing from the speakers, its final piano notes repeating in the empty spaces between heartbeats. The air smelled of coffee, warm electronics, and the faint metallic heat of equipment that had been running for hours. Jungkook did not turn around. Jimin stood beside him, his head lowered, one hand wrapped tightly around the strap of his bag. Taehyung stared at their backs. "Look at me," he said. Jungkook's fingers tightened around the door handle. Jimin closed his eyes. Across the room, RM slowly lowered the tablet he had been holding. Jin stopped halfway through putting his jacket on. J-Hope's expression changed from confusion to concern. Suga, sitting near the mixing console, remained completely still, but his eyes had sharpened. Nobody understood what had happened. 10 minutes earlier, they had been laughing. 20 minutes earlier, Jungkook and Jimin had been arguing over a vocal line. An hour earlier, Taehyung had been teasing Jungkook for drinking his 4th iced coffee. Now the room felt as though someone had opened a window in the middle of winter. Jungkook finally turned his head. His eyes met Taehyung's. There was something in them that made Taehyung's anger disappear. Fear. Not ordinary fear. The kind that someone tried desperately to hide, because admitting it would make it real. "Taehyung," Jungkook whispered. Taehyung took one step forward. "Why are you leaving?" Jungkook looked at Jimin. Jimin looked back. That single glance was enough. They had already decided something. And Taehyung realized, with a cold pressure forming beneath his ribs, that everyone else had been left outside that decision. "I asked you a question," Taehyung said, quieter now. Jimin swallowed. "We just need to go." "Go where?" "Home. Together." Neither answered. Taehyung laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "You two disappear in the middle of rehearsal, don't say anything, and now you're telling me you just need to go home." Jungkook finally turned around. "I'm sorry." The apology struck Taehyung harder than an argument would have. He hated apologies like that. Short. Final. The kind that sounded like a door being closed. "What are you sorry for?" Jungkook looked down. "I don't know." Taehyung stared at him. "That makes no sense." "I know." "Then explain." "I can't." Jimin's voice came softly from beside him. "Taehyung." Taehyung looked at him. "What?" Jimin's lips parted, but no words came. For a moment, Taehyung saw something behind Jimin's eyes. Guilt. His stomach tightened. "What happened?" "Nothing." "Don't lie to me." Jimin flinched. Jungkook immediately stepped between them. "Taehyung." "No," Taehyung shook his head. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Protect him from me." Jungkook froze. Taehyung's voice dropped. "I'm not trying to hurt either of you." "I know." "Then stop treating me like I'm the problem." Silence. The music kept playing. A soft instrumental loop. Over and over. Jimin finally reached for the laptop and stopped the track. The sudden silence was almost painful. Taehyung looked from Jimin to Jungkook. "Tell me." Jimin's fingers trembled slightly. "We found something." Taehyung's expression changed. "What?" Jimin looked at Jungkook. Jungkook shook his head. "Not here." Taehyung's eyes narrowed. "Why not here?" "Because someone might be listening." Jin's head snapped up. What? J-Hope stood. Listening to what? Jungkook immediately looked toward the hallway. Suga slowly rose from his chair. Who told you that? Jungkook hesitated. No one. Suga's eyes hardened. Then why do you believe it? Jungkook said nothing. Taehyung stepped closer. Jungkook. The younger man finally looked at him. Because we saw our names. The room went silent. Taehyung frowned. What do you mean? Jimin pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket. He stared at it for several seconds before placing it on the table. Taehyung walked toward it. RM was already there. He picked it up. His face changed. What is this? I don't know, Jimin said. RM unfolded the paper completely. There were 6 names written on it. RM, Jin, Suga, J-Hope, Jimin, Taehyung. Jungkook was not on the list. Taehyung stared at the names. His mouth went dry. Where did you get this? Jimin shook his head. It was inside the old recording archive. Suga stepped closer. Which archive? The one downstairs. Suga's expression became unreadable. That room has been locked for months. We know. Then how did you get inside? Jimin looked at Jungkook. Jungkook answered. The door wasn't locked. Nobody spoke. Taehyung looked at the paper again. Why aren't you on it? Jungkook's eyes dropped. I don't know. Taehyung stared at him. That answer frightened him more than the list. Because Jungkook was usually incapable of hiding his thoughts from his face. Tonight he was hiding everything. Why did you two find this together? Taehyung asked. Jimin took a slow breath. We weren't looking for it. Then what were you looking for? Jimin hesitated. Jungkook answered for him. My old demo. Taehyung frowned. Your demo. The one I recorded years ago. What does that have to do with the archive? I thought the original file was there. And Jungkook looked at the paper. And it wasn't. Taehyung's eyes moved slowly across the room. Then what did you find? Jimin whispered, a folder. What folder? Jimin looked at him. One with our names on it. The silence returned. Taehyung felt his heartbeat in his throat. Where is it? Jungkook's expression tightened. We didn't take it. Why? Because there were cameras. Taehyung looked at the ceiling. Cameras? Jungkook nodded. Old ones. Suga's jaw tightened. There aren't supposed to be cameras in that corridor. Jimin looked at him. That's what we thought. J-Hope walked toward the door. Show me. No. Everyone looked at Jungkook. J-Hope stopped. No. Jungkook shook his head. Not tonight. Taehyung stared at him. Why? Jungkook's voice became barely audible. Because the person who put the folder there knows we found it. Nobody moved. Then the studio lights flickered. Once. Twice. The speakers made a sharp clicking noise. Jimin immediately grabbed Jungkook's arm. Taehyung turned toward the equipment. Did someone shut down the power? RM checked the console. No. Another flicker. The hallway lights went dark. Jin whispered, okay, that's creepy. Suga reached for his phone. Stay here. The darkness lasted only 4 seconds. Then the lights came back. But something had changed. The paper was gone. Taehyung stared at the empty table. What the hell? RM looked around. Nobody had moved. Jimin's face went white. Jungkook whispered, that's impossible. Taehyung's heart began pounding. Who took it? Nobody answered. Suga walked toward the door. Everyone stay inside. But Taehyung was already moving. He pushed past him and ran into the hallway. The corridor was empty. The fluorescent lights buzzed above him. He looked left. Nothing. Right. Nothing. Then he saw it. At the end of the hallway, a door was slowly closing. Taehyung ran. Hey! The door slammed. He reached it and pulled it open. The stairwell was empty. His breathing echoed against concrete walls. He stood there frozen. Then he heard footsteps below. Vast. Fading. Taehyung took the stairs 2 at a time. Wait. The footsteps stopped. He reached the next landing. Nothing. Only a small black object lay on the floor. Taehyung bent down. A USB drive. He picked it up. There was a piece of white tape wrapped around it. One word had been written in black ink. Taehyung. His fingers went cold. Behind him, someone whispered his name. Taehyung. He spun around. Jungkook stood on the stairs. Taehyung. Taehyung held up the USB drive. Jungkook's face drained of color. You shouldn't have picked that up. Why? Because that's what they wanted. Taehyung stared at him. Who? Jungkook didn't answer. Who Jungkook? Jungkook came down 1 step. I don't know. Stop saying that. I swear. Then tell me what you do know. Jungkook looked toward the darkness below. Then back at Taehyung. I know that someone has been watching us for a long time. Taehyung's grip tightened around the drive. How long? Jungkook swallowed. Longer than we thought. A door opened upstairs. Jimin appeared. Jungkook. He ran down the stairs. What happened? Taehyung held up the drive. Jimin stopped. For several seconds, he simply stared. Then he whispered no. Taehyung looked between them. You both knew this might happen. Jimin shook his head. No, not this. What does it contain? We don't know. Then why are you scared? Jimin looked at Taehyung. Because the label is your name. Taehyung looked at the drive. The hallway suddenly felt smaller. He could hear the faint electrical hum inside the walls. He could smell dust and old concrete. And underneath everything, the sharp scent of his own sweat. Take me home, Jungkook said. Taehyung looked up. What? Please. Why? Because I don't trust this place anymore. Jimin nodded. I don't either. Taehyung studied both of them. Then he surprised them. He put the USB drive into his pocket. We're not going home. Jungkook stared. What? We're going back upstairs. Taehyung. We're going to find out what this is. Jimin shook his head. No. Yes. You don't understand. Then explain it. We can't. Taehyung's eyes hardened. That's exactly the problem. He started walking upstairs. Jungkook grabbed his wrist. Taehyung. Taehyung stopped. Jungkook's fingers were cold. Don't do this alone. Taehyung looked at his hand. Then at Jungkook's face. You're coming with me. Jungkook hesitated. Jimin sighed. Then I'm coming too. They climbed the stairs together. When they returned to the studio, everyone was still there. RM was checking the security system. Suga was examining the hallway cameras. Jin had stopped joking entirely. J-Hope stood near the window, staring at the city lights. Taehyung entered first. Everyone looked at him. Suga immediately noticed the change in his expression. What did you find? Taehyung pulled the USB drive from his pocket. The room became silent. Suga's eyes narrowed. Where? Stairwell. Label. Taehyung turned it around. Suga saw his name. His expression changed. Don't plug that into anything. Taehyung nodded. RM looked at him. What happened downstairs? Someone was there. Jimin spoke. We heard footsteps. Jungkook added, but we didn't see anyone. Jin exhaled slowly. This is getting ridiculous. No, Suga said. Everyone looked at him. This is getting serious. He walked toward Taehyung. Give it to me. Taehyung hesitated. Why? I'll check it safely. Taehyung handed it over. Suga placed the drive on the table without connecting it. RM pulled a laptop from a locked cabinet. We can isolate the system. Taehyung watched them prepare. Jungkook stood beside him. Their shoulders nearly touched. Jimin sat on the couch, staring at the floor. Taehyung noticed his hands. Jimin was rubbing his thumb against his index finger. A habit he had whenever he was anxious. Taehyung knew that habit. He had seen it countless times. Jimin looked up. What? You're hiding something. Jimin's eyes flickered. Jungkook immediately looked at him. Taehyung noticed. You are. Jimin lowered his head. I didn't want to scare you. You already scared me. Jimin closed his eyes. When Jungkook and I found the folder, there was another note. What did it say? Jimin looked at Jungkook. Jungkook whispered, tell him. Jimin took a breath. It said that one of us would eventually leave. Taehyung's expression froze. Leave what? The group. The words landed heavily. Jin turned around. What? Jimin's voice shook. It said someone would leave because they would believe the others had betrayed them. RM looked stunned. Suga's eyes darkened. Did it say who? Jimin shook his head. No. Taehyung stared at Jungkook. Is that why you were leaving? Jungkook looked away. No. Then why? Jungkook remained silent. Jungkook. His eyes finally met Taehyung's. Because I thought it was me. Taehyung felt something crack inside his chest. Why? Because my name wasn't on the list. That doesn't mean anything. It does to me. Why? Jungkook's voice became rough. Because I've always been the one who thinks I'm easiest to replace. Nobody spoke. Jimin looked at him. Jungkook. I know it's stupid. No, Taehyung said quietly, it's not. Jungkook looked at him. Taehyung stepped closer. You really believe we would replace you? Jungkook looked down. I don't know what I believe anymore. Taehyung swallowed. For a moment, the mysterious folder disappeared from his mind. There was only Jungkook, the younger man who always laughed first when things became uncomfortable. The person who worked until everyone else went home. The person who apologized when someone else was hurt. The person who could stand in front of thousands of people without trembling, but sometimes struggled to say what he actually felt. Taehyung placed a hand on his shoulder. You're not replaceable. Jungkook's lips trembled. Taehyung, you don't get to decide how much you mean to us. Jungkook looked away quickly. Jimin wiped his eye. Jin quietly turned his back, pretending to inspect the window. RM cleared his throat. We have something. Everyone looked at him. The isolated laptop displayed a single folder. No title. No date. No owner. Suga leaned closer. Open it. RM clicked. A video file appeared. Everyone became still. The timestamp was from 6 months earlier. J-Hope frowned. 6 months. RM clicked play. The screen showed the studio. The same studio. Empty. Then someone entered. The camera angle was from the ceiling. The person wore a black hood. Their face was hidden. They walked toward the mixing console, placed something on the desk, then turned toward the camera. The video stopped. Taehyung stared. That's it. RM shook his head. There is another file. He opened it. The next video was dated 3 months earlier. Same studio. Same hooded figure. This time, the person stood in front of the camera for several seconds, then raised one hand. There was a small white object between 2 fingers. A photograph. The figure placed it directly beneath the camera. The video ended. RM paused. Nobody spoke. Suga looked at the laptop. Do you have the photograph? RM opened another file. A digital image appeared. Taehyung leaned closer, then froze. The photograph showed all 7 members. It had been taken years earlier. They were standing together, laughing. But someone had drawn a black line through Jungkook. Jimin covered his mouth. Jungkook stepped backward. Taehyung felt his chest tighten. That photo was never public. RM looked at him. What? That specific photo. Taehyung pointed at the screen. We took it after rehearsal. The photographer wasn't supposed to keep copies. Jin frowned. How do you know? Because I remember. Jungkook stared at the image. I remember that day. Jimin whispered, me too. Suga crossed his arms. Then whoever has this has access to something old. Or someone who was there, RM said. That possibility changed the room. J-Hope slowly sat down. You think it's someone we know? Suga didn't answer. Taehyung looked at Jungkook. Jungkook looked back. Neither needed to say it. The danger wasn't necessarily outside. It might be closer. Much closer. Taehyung walked toward the laptop. Play the first video again. RM did. The hooded figure entered. Walked to the desk. Placed something down. Taehyung leaned closer. Stop. RM paused. Zoom in. The image became blurry. But Taehyung noticed something. The figure's left hand. There was a ring. A silver ring with a thin black line across the center. Taehyung's breathing stopped. He knew that ring. He had seen it before. Recently. He turned toward the others. Jungkook noticed immediately. What? Taehyung didn't answer. Jimin stood. Taehyung. Taehyung looked at his friends. His eyes moved from one face to another. Then stopped. I've seen that ring. Suga's voice was quiet. Where? Taehyung hesitated. On someone who came here last week. Everyone stared at him. Who? RM asked. Taehyung's mouth opened. Then closed. He realized something. He wasn't ready to say the name. Not because he wanted to protect that person. Because he wasn't certain. And accusing someone without certainty could destroy everything. Jungkook stepped closer. Taehyung. Taehyung looked at him. Do you know who it is? Taehyung slowly shook his head. No. It was the first lie he had ever told Jungkook that felt heavier than the truth. The night continued. They checked the security system. They searched the studio. They examined every file they could access. Nothing gave them a clear answer. Eventually, around 3 in the morning, Jin ordered everyone to sit down and eat something. Nobody argued. Instant noodles steamed in paper cups. The smell filled the room. For a few minutes, nobody talked about the mystery. J-Hope made a weak joke about Jin becoming everyone's mother. Jin rolled his eyes. Suga quietly ate. RM stared at the laptop. Jimin sat beside Jungkook. Taehyung sat across from them. He watched Jungkook stir noodles without eating. "You're going to destroy the noodles." Jungkook looked up. "What?" "You've been stirring them for 5 minutes." Jungkook glanced down. "Oh." Taehyung smiled faintly. "Eat." Jungkook picked up his chopsticks. "You too." "I am." "You're starring." "At you." Jungkook nodded. Taehyung shrugged. "I'm making sure you're still here." Jungkook's expression softened. "I am." Jimin looked at them. "You two are strange." Taehyung smiled. "You're one to talk." Jimin laughed quietly. It was the first genuine laugh of the night. For a moment, the fear loosened its grip. The room felt like itself again. Not a crime scene. Not a place of secrets. Just 7 people sitting together after a long night. Taehyung looked around. Maybe that was what the person behind everything wanted. To make them suspicious of one another. To make them question memories. To make them doubt the very thing that had kept them together. Trust. Taehyung slowly reached into his pocket. The USB drive was still there. He felt its hard plastic edge against his fingers. He didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Because he had made a decision. He would find the truth. But he would not let the truth destroy them before they were ready to face it. Jungkook looked across the table. "Taehyung." "What?" "Thank you for not leaving." Taehyung smiled. "I told you." "What?" "You don't get to leave alone." Jungkook lowered his eyes. A small smile appeared. Jimin leaned against his shoulder. Outside, the city was beginning to brighten. The darkness above Seoul slowly softened into gray. The studio windows reflected their tired faces. Nobody knew what the next day would bring. But for that moment, they remained together. No one walked away. No one said goodbye. And Taehyung, with the mysterious USB drive hidden inside his pocket, made one silent promise to himself. Whatever had begun inside that studio, he would not let fear decide how it ended. He looked at Jungkook and Jimin. Then at the others. The room was quiet. Not peaceful exactly. But together. And somehow, after everything that had happened, that was enough for one night. "Tell me whose ring that is, Taehyung, or I swear I'm going to walk out of this room and find the person myself." Suga's voice cut through the studio like a blade, and for the first time that night Taehyung understood that silence was no longer protecting anyone. The gray morning outside had barely begun to replace the darkness, yet inside the studio the atmosphere had become heavier than it had been hours earlier. Jungkook sat rigidly on the couch, Jimin beside him, while RM stood near the laptop with his arms folded tightly across his chest. Jin had stopped eating altogether. J-Hope kept glancing toward the hallway as though expecting someone to appear there at any moment. Taehyung remained near the table, one hand still inside his jacket pocket, his fingers wrapped around the USB drive. "I said I've seen the ring," he answered. "I didn't say I know who owns it." "That isn't what you said before," Suga replied. "You said you saw it on someone who came here last week." "I did." "Who?" Taehyung looked at him. "I'm not sure." "Not sure?" Suga stepped forward. "You recognized the ring well enough to freeze when you saw it on that video, but now you're suddenly not sure. Because I don't want to accuse someone without proof." "Proof?" Suga laughed bitterly. We found a hidden camera, a secret folder with our names, a photograph that was never supposed to exist, and a USB drive labeled with Taehyung's name. How much more proof do you need before you admit something is seriously wrong? I know something is wrong, Taehyung snapped. I'm the one who chased someone down the stairwell. The room fell silent. Jungkook immediately looked at him. You chased them, Taehyung nodded. I heard footsteps. Why didn't you tell us? Jimin asked. Because I didn't see their face. You should have told us anyway, RM said. Taehyung turned toward him. And what would that have changed? RM hesitated. We would have known. Exactly, you would have known that someone was running away while we were standing here arguing. Enough, Jin said quietly. We're exhausted. No, Suga said. We're scared. Jin looked at him. There's a difference. Not tonight. Jungkook suddenly stood. Stop. Everyone turned. His voice was louder than usual, and something in his expression made the room still. We're doing exactly what they want. Suga narrowed his eyes. Whoever is behind this. Jungkook looked around at all of them. They put our names on a list. They showed us a photograph with my face crossed out. They left a drive with Taehyung's name. Every single thing we've found is designed to make us suspicious of each other. Jimin nodded slowly. He's right. Then why did you leave with him? Taehyung asked. Jimin looked at him. Because I was scared. Of what? Jimin's eyes filled with tears, but he refused to let them fall. Of losing him. Jungkook looked down. Taehyung felt the anger inside him weaken. Jimin, when we found the folder, Jimin continued, Jungkook thought the list meant something. He thought someone was preparing to remove him from everything. He started blaming himself before we even knew what the documents meant. I didn't blame myself, Jungkook muttered. Jimin turned toward him. You said maybe they're preparing everyone for the day I disappear. Jungkook went silent. Taehyung stared at him. You said that? Jungkook rubbed both hands over his face. I was tired. That isn't an answer. I know. Taehyung took a breath and sat beside him. Look at me. Jungkook didn't. Jungkook. Slowly, he raised his eyes. Taehyung saw the exhaustion there. Not just physical exhaustion. It was the kind that came from fighting thoughts that never stopped moving. Why would you think we wanted you gone? Taehyung asked. Jungkook looked toward the floor. Because sometimes people don't leave because they hate you. Then why? Because they think you're better without them. Jimin closed his eyes. Jungkook, I know it sounds stupid, Jungkook said, but when you've spent enough time thinking that you're the weakest link, every silence starts to sound like confirmation. Taehyung swallowed. Who made you feel that way? Jungkook laughed softly. No one. That's another lie. Maybe. Kook, I made myself feel that way. The words hung in the air. Nobody interrupted him. Every time I make a mistake, I remember it longer than everyone else does. Every time someone says I did well, I wonder how long before they change their mind. When I saw my name missing from that list, I thought maybe someone already knew what I've been thinking for years. Taehyung's eyes burned. That you don't belong, Jungkook nodded. Taehyung shook his head. Then listen carefully. You are not a guest here. You are not someone we keep because we feel sorry for you. You are not some piece that can be removed from a puzzle without changing the whole picture. Jungkook stared at him. Then why wasn't my name there? We'll find out. What if the answer is worse? Taehyung leaned closer. Then we face it together. Jimin reached across and placed his hand over Jungkook. Together. Jungkook looked at him, and something inside his face finally softened. Suga watched them for a moment before turning toward the laptop. There's another problem. RM looked up. What? Suga pointed to the screen. The video file was copied yesterday. Everyone froze. Yesterday, J-Hope asked. Yes, but the footage is 6 months old. The footage is old, Suga said. The file is. RM leaned toward the screen. You're right. His fingers moved across the keyboard. Someone accessed the archive yesterday at 11:42 p.m. Taehyung's stomach tightened. We were here at 11:42. Exactly. Jin slowly stood. Whoever copied it knew we would be here. Or they were here with us, Suga said. The sentence detonated in the room. J-Hope looked toward the door. That means... Yes, Suga said. Someone could have watched us the entire night. Jimin's face went pale. Jungkook stood immediately. The cameras, RM nodded. We need to find every camera. Already started, Suga replied. There are at least 3 we didn't know about. Taehyung looked at the ceiling. How many? 7. Jin's voice cracked. 7. Suga nodded. 3 in the hallways, 2 in the archive corridor, 1 in the stairwell, and 1 inside the studio. Everyone stared at the ceiling. Inside the studio, RM whispered. Suga pointed toward a smoke detector near the back wall. There, Taehyung felt a chill crawl up his spine. So they heard everything. Possibly, Suga said, including what we said about the USB. Jimin immediately looked toward Taehyung's pocket. Then they know he has it. A loud sound came from the hallway. Everyone turned. It sounded like something metal had fallen. Jungkook instinctively grabbed Jimin's wrist. Suga raised a hand. Stay here. No, Taehyung said. I'm coming. So am I, J-Hope added. Jin grabbed the nearest heavy microphone stand. I'm coming too, Suga sighed. Fine, but stay behind me. They moved into the hallway together. The corridor was empty. A metal maintenance cart had fallen near the elevator. Nothing else moved. Taehyung approached cautiously. Someone knocked this over. Suga looked at the floor. Maybe. RM crouched down. There are footprints. Everyone leaned closer. 2 different sets. One appeared to belong to a person wearing sneakers. The other was partially visible near the wall. They go toward the elevator, RM said. The elevator doors opened suddenly. Jin nearly jumped backward. Damn it, the elevator was empty. J-Hope laughed nervously. Okay, that was unnecessary. Suga stepped inside and checked the control panel. No recent calls. Taehyung noticed something on the floor, a small black envelope. He picked it up. Don't, Suga warned, too late. Taehyung turned it over. His name was written across the front. Taehyung. Again, his heart pounded. Why does everything have my name? Jimin asked quietly. Because they want you to think you're the target, Suga said. Or because he is the target, Jungkook replied. Suga looked at him. You're not helping. I'm not trying to. Taehyung opened the envelope. Inside was a single photograph. His hands went numb. It showed Taehyung leaving the building 3 days earlier. He was alone. On the back, someone had written, "You saw the ring because you were supposed to." Taehyung stopped breathing. What does it say? RM asked. Taehyung handed him the photograph. RM read the message. You saw the ring because you were supposed to. J-Hope stared. What does that mean? Suga's face hardened. It means this person is manipulating him. Taehyung looked at the photograph again. Or telling me the truth. Taehyung, Jimin said, don't trust a message from someone hiding behind cameras. Taehyung turned toward him. What if they know something we don't? Then we find it out without letting them control us. Easy for you to say, Jimin's eyes narrowed. What does that mean? You and Jungkook found the folder first. And you didn't tell us. Jimin stepped closer because we were trying to understand it. You should have told us. We were scared. So was I. Taehyung's voice echoed down the hallway. Jimin froze. I was scared too, Taehyung continued, his voice breaking. I spent the whole night wondering if one of you was in danger. I watched Jungkook walk out without saying goodbye and thought maybe something had happened that you didn't trust me enough to tell me. Jungkook lowered his head. Hyung, no, let me finish. Taehyung looked at him. You both left me standing there wondering whether you were okay. Do you know what that felt like? Jimin's eyes filled. I'm sorry. I don't need another apology. Then what do you need? Taehyung paused. The truth. Jimin stared at him. Okay, he inhaled slowly. There was something else in the folder. Everyone became still. What? RM asked. Jimin looked at Jungkook. Jungkook's face tightened. Jimin, they deserve to know. Not yet. Why not? Because we don't know if it's real. Taehyung stepped forward. What is it? Jimin finally whispered. A contract. Suga's expression changed. What kind of contract? An agreement. Between whom? We don't know. What did it say? Jimin looked down. It talked about one member leaving temporarily. Who? Jimin hesitated. Me. Silence. Taehyung stared at him. You. Jimin nodded. It said I would be the first. Jungkook immediately spoke. And that's why I thought I was next. Why would they target you? Jin asked. Jimin shook his head. I don't know. RM looked disturbed. Was there a signature? No. Date? No. Company seal? Nothing official. Suga exhaled. Then it could be fabricated. We thought so, Jimin said. Until we found another page. Taehyung felt his pulse quicken. What page? Jimin looked directly at him. It mentioned you. The hallway became silent again. Taehyung's face went blank. What did it say? Jimin whispered. That you would discover the truth before any of us. Taehyung felt the photograph slip slightly in his hand. That doesn't make sense. I know. Why me? We don't know. Suga took the photograph from Taehyung. This is no coincidence. I know, Taehyung replied. But I think there's something you're missing. He looked at the others. The person who left this wants me to believe I'm being watched. You are being watched, RM said. That's obvious. No, I mean they want me to know it. Suga looked at him. Why? Taehyung looked at the photograph. Because fear works better when you can see it. Jungkook stared at him. Then what are we supposed to do? Taehyung answered without hesitation. Stop reacting. What? We stop chasing every message they leave. We stop letting them decide where we go. We stop arguing about which one of us is the traitor. Suga raised an eyebrow. And then, Taehyung looked toward the studio. We make them come to us. RM shook his head. That's dangerous. So is everything else. We don't know what they're capable of. Neither do they know what we're capable of. J-Hope stared at Taehyung. You've got a plan. Taehyung nodded. Maybe, Jin sighed. I don't like that word when you say it like that. Taehyung almost smiled. Then don't like it. They returned to the studio. The sun had fully risen now, casting pale gold across the windows, yet none of them felt relieved. Taehyung placed the USB drive on the table. We need to copy everything without opening it on a connected machine. RM nodded. I can do that. And we need to know who came here last week wearing that ring. Suga looked at Taehyung. You're sure it was last week? Yes. Who was here? Taehyung hesitated again. A producer. Name. Minyu? J-Hope frowned. Minyu from the external production team. Taehyung nodded. He came to discuss the recording schedule. Suga narrowed his eyes. Did he wear that ring? I think so. I remember the design, but you're not certain it was him. No, then don't accuse him. I know. Suddenly Jungkook spoke. Wait. Everyone looked at him. He pointed at the laptop. Go back to the video. RM replayed the footage. The hooded figure entered. Taehyung watched carefully. The left hand appeared again. The ring was visible for barely a second. Jungkook leaned closer. Pause. RM did. Zoom. The image blurred. Jungkook stared. That's not Minyu. Taehyung looked at him. How do you know? Jungkook pointed at the hand. The ring is on the left index finger. Taehyung frowned. So, Minyu wears his ring on his right hand. Everyone looked at him. How do you know that? Jungkook shrugged. I notice things. Jimin smiled faintly. You notice everything. Jungkook ignored him. So whoever this is isn't Minyu. Suga nodded slowly. Good catch. Taehyung felt a strange relief. Mystery had narrowed, but somehow that made it worse. Then who? Nobody answered. RM began scrolling through access logs. There were 5 visitors registered last week. Jin moved closer. Names, RM read them. 2 staff members, 1 producer, 1 security supervisor, and he stopped. And Taehyung asked. RM looked up. A visitor listed under no name. Suga's eyes sharpened. When? 3 days ago. Taehyung's stomach dropped. The photograph, RM nodded. The same day. Security footage, deleted. By whom? Administrator credentials. Suga's face became cold. Whose credentials? RM stared at the screen. Mine. Everyone went silent. RM looked genuinely shocked. I didn't do this. Suga didn't answer. You think I did? RM asked. I didn't say that. Your face did. We're all suspects now, Suga replied, including you. RM stepped closer. Then say it. Say what? Say you think I betrayed you. I don't. But you think someone with my credentials did? Yes. RM laughed once. That's convenient. What is? We keep finding evidence pointing toward someone else. Because that's what the evidence says. Or because someone wants us to fight. Exactly. RM looked at the screen. Then we need to stop fighting. Suga's eyes met his. Agreed. Taehyung watched them. The tension was still there, but something had shifted. The mystery wasn't only about the person outside. It was about how quickly they could turn against one another. Then Jimin's phone vibrated. Everyone looked at him. He checked the screen. His face changed. What? Jungkook asked. Jimin didn't answer. Jimin. He slowly handed the phone to Jungkook. Jungkook read the message. His expression hardened. What does it say? Taehyung asked. Jungkook looked at him. It says, stop looking for the person behind the camera. Look at the person beside you. Everyone froze. Jin whispered, that's sick. Suga reached for the phone. Send me the number. It's blocked, Jimin said. Unknown sender. Taehyung looked around the room. Someone is here. J-Hope shook his head. How do you know? Because they sent that after we started discussing the access logs. RM's face tightened, which means they're monitoring us in real time. Everyone instinctively looked at the hidden camera. Suga moved toward it. Then let's give them something to watch. He grabbed a chair and dragged it directly beneath the camera. What are you doing? Jin asked. Talking. Suga looked directly into the lens. If you're watching, listen carefully. You wanted us to distrust each other. You failed. Taehyung looked at him. Suga, no. Suga continued staring at the camera. You have our attention now, so stop hiding. Nothing happened. Suga smiled without humor. I know you can hear me. The lights flickered. Jimin flinched. Jungkook stepped closer to him. Then the studio speakers suddenly turned on. A recording played. Their own voices filled the room. You don't get to decide how much you mean to us. Taehyung froze. It was his voice from earlier. The recording continued. You are not replaceable. Jungkook looked horrified. They recorded that. Another section played. I don't trust this place anymore. Jungkook's voice, then Jimin's, because I was scared. Then Taehyung's. I was scared too. The audio stopped. Silence. Taehyung's eyes burned. Someone had been listening to everything, every vulnerable confession. Every argument, every word spoken when they thought they were safe. Jimin whispered, they heard us. Jungkook's jaw tight. They wanted to hear us. Taehyung looked at the speaker. Why? A new voice came through, distorted, calm, almost emotionless. Because you keep pretending nothing has changed. Everyone froze. Suga stepped forward. Who are you? The voice answered. Someone who remembers. Remembers what? What you forgot. RM looked at the speaker. If you want something, say it. A low laugh came through. You still think this is about money? Jin frowned. Nobody said money. You always assume betrayal begins with money. Taehyung felt a chill. What do you want? The voice paused. The truth. Taehyung stared at the speaker. Then tell us. Not yet. Suga slammed his hand against the console. Stop playing games. The voice remained calm. You already know the first name. Taehyung's blood ran cold. What name? Yours. The speaker went silent. The lights returned to normal. RM rushed to the controls. Signals gone. Suga stared at the system. They cut the connection. Jimin looked at Taehyung. Why did they say your name? Taehyung didn't answer. His mind was racing through every memory he had, every conversation, every visitor, every strange moment. Then he remembered something. The ring, not on Minyu, not on the producer, on someone else. Someone he had seen much closer than he wanted to admit. Someone who had been standing beside him in the hallway only days ago. Taehyung slowly turned toward Jungkook. Jungkook noticed the change immediately. What? Taehyung shook his head. Nothing. Jungkook stared at him. Hyung, nothing. You're doing it again. Doing what? Hiding something. Taehyung looked away. Jungkook stepped closer. You told me we were going to face this together. We are. Then tell me. Taehyung closed his eyes. The image came back. A silver ring. A black stripe. A hand resting casually against a door. A familiar voice saying goodnight. He opened his eyes. I think I know where I saw it. Everyone looked at him. Where? Taehyung took a slow breath. On someone inside our circle. Jungkook's expression changed. Who? Taehyung looked around at the 7 chairs in the studio. I don't know yet, Suga sighed. Then we investigate before we accuse. Taehyung nodded. Agreed. Jimin moved closer. But you're still scared. Taehyung looked at him. Yes. Good, Jimin whispered. Because pretending you're not scared is what got us here. Taehyung smiled sadly. Maybe. Outside, traffic began filling the streets. The city was waking up while the 7 of them remained trapped inside a mystery none of them had asked for. Jungkook sat beside Jimin again. Their shoulders touched. RM closed the laptop. Jin finally picked up his cold cup of noodles. J-Hope exhaled and sank into a chair. Suga stood near the window, watching the street below. Taehyung remained by the table, staring at the USB drive. He no longer felt like the target. He felt like a piece of a puzzle. And somewhere in the back of his mind, one question kept repeating itself. Why had the stranger said that Taehyung already knew the first name? He didn't understand it yet. But for the first time, he realized something that frightened him more than the hidden cameras. The person behind everything might not be trying to destroy them. They might be trying to force them to remember something they had collectively forgotten. Taehyung slowly reached for Jungkook's hand. Jungkook looked at him, surprised. Then held on. Jimin noticed and smiled faintly. Nobody spoke. The morning light grew warmer across the floor. They were exhausted, suspicious, frightened, and still missing most of the answers. Yet they were together. For now, that mattered. And when Taehyung finally looked at the others, he no longer saw 7 people being hunted. He saw 7 people who had survived too much to let a stranger decide what they meant to each other. The next step would have to be careful. It would have to be honest. And above all, it would have to begin with one question none of them had been brave enough to ask yet. What had really happened years ago, before any of them became famous, that someone was now desperate to make them remember? You already knew, didn't you? Jimin's voice was barely above a whisper, but in the dead silence of the studio, it sounded louder than any accusation they had thrown at one another that morning, and Taehyung knew immediately that pretending otherwise would only make everything worse. He slowly lifted his eyes from the USB drive on the table and found Jimin staring directly at him, his expression stripped of the softness he usually carried when speaking to the others. Jungkook sat beside him, tense and motionless, while RM, Jin, Suga, and J-Hope watched Taehyung with the same question written across their faces. Taehyung swallowed. "I knew something," he admitted. "Not everything." Suga folded his arms. "That's not good enough anymore." "I know." "Then start talking." Taehyung glanced toward Jungkook. The younger man's eyes were fixed on him. "You promised," Jungkook said quietly. "I know. You said we wouldn't hide things from each other." "I know." "Then why are you doing exactly that?" Taehyung looked down at the USB drive. His thumb slowly rubbed against its edge. "Because I was afraid." Jimin's expression softened for half a second, but Suga immediately stepped forward. "Afraid of what?" Taehyung took a long breath. "Of being wrong. About the ring. About the person wearing it." "Who?" "I don't know." Suga's jaw tightened. "You're doing it again." "Because I can't prove it." "Then tell us what you suspect." Taehyung looked around the room. "I think I saw the ring on someone who has been close to us for a long time." "How close?" RM asked. "Close enough that accusing them could destroy everything." Jin slowly set down his cup. "Then perhaps we should know who you're talking about before we start imagining the worst." Taehyung nodded. "I saw the ring 2 days ago." J-Hope frowned. "You said last week." "I thought it was last week." "You thought?" Taehyung closed his eyes. "Everything happened so quickly. I saw the ring. I remember the design. I remember thinking it looked familiar, but I didn't realize how important it was until I saw the video." Jungkook leaned forward. "Where did you see it?" Taehyung hesitated. "In the parking garage." "Who was there?" "I was, and someone else." "Who?" Jungkook's voice became firmer. "Taehyung." Taehyung finally looked at him. "I saw a person standing near the elevator." "Who?" "I didn't see their face." Suga exhaled sharply. "Again, I was tired." "Convenient." Taehyung's eyes hardened. Don't what? Don't talk to me like I'm protecting someone. Then stop giving us half the truth." "I'm trying to remember," Taehyung shouted. His voice echoed across the room. "Do you think I enjoy this? Do you think I want to stand here and suspect people I've trusted for years?" Nobody answered. Taehyung's chest rose and fell rapidly. Jungkook watched him carefully. "What did the person say?" Taehyung looked at him. "Nothing. They didn't speak." "No." "Then how do you know they were someone familiar?" Taehyung looked toward the floor. "Because of the way they walked." J-Hope blinked. "The way they walked. I know it sounds ridiculous." "It doesn't," Jimin said softly. "You noticed details." Taehyung nodded. "The person walked with a slight limp." Suga's expression changed. "A limp, very slight, barely noticeable." RM frowned. "Do you know anyone in our circle who walks like that?" Taehyung opened his mouth, then stopped. His face changed. "What?" Jungkook asked. Taehyung shook his head. "No. What did you remember?" "Nothing." Taehyung. "I said nothing." Jungkook stood. "Why are you lying?" "Because I don't know if the memory is real." "Then tell us that." Taehyung looked at him. "I remember someone from years ago." The room changed instantly. Suga's eyes narrowed. "Years ago? Yes. Who?" "Someone who used to help us." "Staff?" RM asked. "Not exactly." "Then who?" Taehyung hesitated. "A trainee." Jimin slowly stood. "Which trainee?" Taehyung looked at him. "I don't remember his name." "You don't remember?" Jin asked. "It was a long time ago." Suga stepped closer. "You expect us to believe you forgot the name of someone who may be connected to this. I don't expect you to believe anything." "Then why tell us?" "Because I finally remembered the limp." Jungkook's face tightened. "What happened to him?" Taehyung looked toward the window. "He disappeared." Silence. "What do you mean disappeared?" RM asked. "He stopped coming." "Why?" "Nobody knew." "Did you know him?" Jimin asked. Taehyung nodded. "A little." "How little?" "We practice together sometimes." "Why don't I remember him?" Jungkook asked. Taehyung smiled sadly. "Because you weren't around us every second. But I would have remembered. Maybe." "What was his name?" Taehyung looked down. "I think it was Seojun." Suga immediately frowned. "Seojun? Maybe. Maybe. I told you I don't remember." RM was already reaching for his laptop. "I'll search the old internal records." "Don't," Taehyung said. RM stopped. Why? Because if someone is monitoring us, they'll know we're looking for him. Suga looked at Taehyung. They already know. Then we need to be smarter. How? By giving them something they don't expect. Suga's eyes narrowed. Such as, Taehyung looked at the hidden camera. A false memory. Everyone stared. What? Jin asked. We tell them something untrue and see what happens. Slowly understood. A trap. Taehyung nodded. Exactly. J-Hope shook his head. That's risky. Everything is risky now. What if they retaliate? Jimin asked. Then we learn they're still watching. Jungkook stared at Taehyung. And if they don't, then we know the camera isn't the only way they're monitoring us. Suga gave a faint smile. You've been thinking. Taehyung looked at him. I haven't slept. Clearly. Can we stop fighting for 5 minutes? Jin said. We're wasting time. Suga nodded. Fine. What false information? Taehyung thought for several seconds. We say we found the original contract. Jimin's eyes widened. We didn't. Exactly. RM nodded. We say it identifies the person behind everything. J-Hope looked uncomfortable. And then we watch who reacts. How? We don't know yet, Taehyung admitted. But if they're monitoring us, they might try to interfere. Suga looked toward the camera. Then we need to make the bait believable. RM pulled a blank document onto the screen. I can create something that looks authentic. No, Taehyung said. It should look imperfect. RM looked at him. Why? Because if it's too perfect, they'll know. Jimin nodded. Make it look like something we found by accident. Jungkook looked at Taehyung. And what should the name be? Taehyung hesitated. No name. Why? We tell them the name is hidden in the final page. Suga smiled. Good. Jin looked around. And then what? We wait. The plan began quietly. RM created a fake document with old formatting. Jimin found a discarded folder and aged its edges. Jin spilled coffee across one corner to make it look authentic. J-Hope joked nervously that they were becoming terrible criminals. Suga didn't laugh. Jungkook kept watching Taehyung. Every few minutes their eyes met. Every time Taehyung saw the same question. Are you sure? Eventually Jungkook walked toward him. You really think it's Seojin? Taehyung shook his head. I don't know, but you remember him. I remember someone. What happened between you? Taehyung looked at him. Nothing. Jungkook raised an eyebrow. You don't look like someone remembering nothing. Taehyung sighed. He was angry. At you, at all of us. Why? Because he believed we were getting opportunities he deserved. Jungkook's expression darkened. Jealousy, maybe. Did you fight? Once. What happened? Taehyung looked away. He told me I'd regret becoming successful. Jungkook's eyes widened. And you never told anyone. It seemed meaningless at the time. Taehyung. We were young. That doesn't make it meaningless. I know. Jungkook was silent for a moment. What happened after that? A week later he was gone. And you never saw him again? Taehyung slowly shook his head. No. Until now, Taehyung didn't answer. Jungkook's face tightened. You think that person in the parking garage was him? I think it's possible. Then why didn't you say that earlier? Because I didn't want to put a name on something I couldn't prove. Jungkook stared at him. Keep trying to protect everyone. Is that bad? Sometimes. Why? Because when you protect people from the truth, you leave them alone with their fear. Taehyung looked at him. Who taught you that? Jungkook smiled sadly. You did. Taehyung almost laughed. Then maybe I haven't learned my own lesson. Jungkook touched his shoulder. Learn it now. Their conversation ended when Suga called them. It's ready. Everyone gathered around the table. The fake document was printed. It looked convincingly old. RM had inserted a false access record and a fabricated note suggesting that the final page contained the identity of the person responsible. Taehyung held the folder. Where do we leave it? Somewhere visible, Suga said, but not too visible. The studio desk, Jimin suggested. No, they expect us to use this room. Suga thought for a moment. The archive. Taehyung shook his head. That's where they expect us to go. Then somewhere unexpected. Jin suddenly spoke. The rehearsal room. Everyone looked at him. Nobody monitors that room, RM asked. Not officially. Suga nodded. Good. They moved the folder there. Taehyung placed it beneath a stack of old choreography notes. Then they returned to the studio and began talking loudly enough for the hidden microphone to capture every word. I can't believe we finally found it, RM said. Taehyung forced his voice to sound relieved. I can't believe the name is actually there. Jimin added, we need to read it before anyone sees. Suga replied, no, we wait until tonight. The conversation continued for 10 minutes. They deliberately mentioned a fabricated name, Kang Seojun. Taehyung's heart hammered as he said it aloud. So it's Seojun. Jungkook glanced at him. The name tasted strange in the room, then they waited. Nothing happened. 10 minutes, 20, 40, an hour, no messages, no flickering lights, no footsteps. Finally J-Hope whispered, maybe it didn't work. Suga shook his head. Wait, 2 hours passed. Then RM looked at the security feed. Someone entered the rehearsal room. Everyone stood. The footage showed a hooded figure walking into the room. They moved toward the stack of papers. Taehyung's heart pounded. The figure picked up the folder, opened it, stopped. Then slowly turned toward the camera. The image froze. What happened? Jimin asked. RM checked the system. The feed was interrupted. Suga cursed under his breath. They knew. Taehyung stared at the screen. Did they take the folder? Yes. Then the trap worked. Jungkook looked at him. But we don't know who it is. RM restarted the feed. A frame appeared for less than a second. The hooded figure had lifted their hand. The ring was visible. Taehyung leaned toward the screen. That's it. Suga zoomed in. The ring, left index finger, black stripe. The figure removed the hood for 1 second. The face remained blurred. But the limp was visible. Taehyung froze. It's him. Jimin whispered, Seojun. Taehyung nodded slowly. I think so. Suga immediately reached for his phone. We need to find him. No, Taehyung said, we need to know where he went. Same thing, not if someone else is using him. Suga stopped. What? Taehyung pointed at the screen. Look at the way he walks. What about it? He favors his left leg. And the person I remember favored the right. Everyone stared at him. Taehyung's face went pale. It's not Seojun. Jimin whispered, then who? Taehyung couldn't answer. Suddenly the laptop made a sharp notification sound. A new file had appeared. No one touched the keyboard. RM stared. That's impossible. Suga moved closer. Open it. Wait, open it. RM clicked. A video appeared. The screen showed Taehyung sitting alone in the studio earlier that morning. He was holding the USB drive. The camera angle was different from the hidden camera. It was close enough to show his face clearly. Taehyung felt ice spread through his body. That's not one of the studio cameras. RM shook his head. No. Then where was it? Nobody answered. The video continued. Taehyung watched himself speaking to Jungkook. You don't get to decide how much you mean to us. Jungkook's face changed. He heard his own voice. I know. Then the video changed. Another date, another location. Taehyung standing outside his home. Another clip. Taehyung walking through a hallway. Another. Taehyung sleeping. Jimin covered his mouth. No. Jungkook stepped forward. Turn it off. RM couldn't. The video continued. There were dozens of clips. Taehyung alone, Taehyung with the others, Taehyung leaving buildings, Taehyung talking to staff, Taehyung crying in a car, Taehyung staring through a window, Taehyung sleeping, Taehyung in moments he had never known were recorded. His face went blank. How long? He whispered. Suga looked at the metadata. 4 years. Everyone froze. 4 years, Jin whispered. The earliest file is 4 years old. Taehyung sat down. Someone has been watching me for 4 years. Jungkook's face tightened. Why? Taehyung didn't answer. Jimin crouched beside him. Taehyung. Taehyung looked at him. His eyes were wet. I don't understand. Jimin put a hand on his shoulder. We'll figure it out. 4 years. I know. 4 years, Jimin. I know. And I never noticed. Jimin's voice broke. None of us did. Taehyung laughed bitterly. Maybe that's the point. Suga looked at the screen. There are more folders. RM opened one. Inside were documents, hundreds. What are those? J-Hope asked. RM opened the first. Psychological profiles. Jin's expression hardened. What? RM scrolled. They're analyzing us. Who? I don't know. Open Taehyung's. RM hesitated. Don't. Taehyung spoke. Open it. RM did. The document contained pages of observations, habits, emotional triggers, relationships, fears, strengths, weaknesses. One sentence caught Taehyung's eye. Subject responds strongly to perceived abandonment. His breathing stopped. Another line. Subject is most vulnerable when Jungkook withdraws. Jungkook stared at the screen. They know about us. Taehyung shook his head. They know too much. Jimin read another line. Subject is likely to sacrifice personal safety to protect group members. Taehyung whispered, stop. RM closed the file, but another appeared automatically. Jungkook's, then Jimin's, then RM's, Jin's, Suga's, J-Hope's. Every member had a profile. This is insane, Jin said. Who does this? Suga stared at the screen. Someone who has been studying us. For what? J-Hope asked. Control, the word hung there. Then another file opened automatically. It contained a photograph of all 7 members standing together. Beneath it was a sentence. The group will remain stable as long as they believe the threat is external. Jimin's eyes widened. Oh my God, Taehyung understood. They're not trying to make us fight. Then what? Jungkook asked. Taehyung looked at the screen. They're trying to make us believe we are being attacked from outside. Suga frowned. Why? Because if we look outside, we don't look inside. RM slowly turned toward Taehyung. Inside what? Taehyung stared at the photograph. Our own history. Nobody spoke. Then the screen went black. A message appeared in white letters. You finally remembered. Taehyung's blood ran cold. Another line appeared. Now ask what happened to Seojun. Jimin whispered, Seojun. Taehyung looked at Jungkook. But the person in the video wasn't him. Then why mention him? Suga asked. The answer came seconds later. Another message appeared because he was the first. The screen went dark. J-Hope stepped back. First what? Nobody answered. Then the studio door opened. Everyone turned. A man stood outside. No hood, no mask, no attempt to hide his face. Taehyung recognized him immediately. His heart stopped. Minyu. The producer stood in the doorway, breathing heavily. You need to leave. Suga moved between him and the others. Why? Minyu looked at Taehyung. Because they know you found the files. Taehyung's voice shook. Who are they? Minyu looked at the hidden camera. Not who you think. Suga grabbed his arm. Start talking. Minyu pulled away. You don't understand. Then explain. I can't. Taehyung's voice suddenly became cold. Everyone keeps saying that. Minyu looked at him because the truth is worse. Try me. Minyu stared at Taehyung for several seconds. Then he said, Seojun didn't disappear. Taehyung froze. Jimin grabbed Jungkook's hand. What? Minyu swallowed. He was removed. By whom? Suga demanded. The people who created those profiles. Who are they? Minyu looked at the 7 members. They were watching you before you became what you are now. Jin stepped forward. Why? Because someone believed the group would become powerful. RM frowned. That's ridiculous. Is it? Minyu asked. You think everything that happened was coincidence? Nobody answered. The opportunities, the timing, the people who suddenly appeared, the contracts, the decisions. Taehyung's face hardened. Are you saying someone planned our success? Minyu shook his head. I'm saying someone planned the conditions around it. Suga stared at him. Who? Minyu looked toward the hallway. I don't know anymore. Liar, I'm not lying. Then why did you come here? Minyu's eyes moved to Taehyung. Because I was warned. By whom? Seojun. Taehyung felt his blood run cold. He's alive. Minyu nodded. Yes. Where? I don't know. Then how did he contact you? A message. What did it say? Minyu looked at Taehyung. It said you were finally ready. Taehyung's face tightened. Ready for what? Minyu whispered. To remember the night he disappeared. The room became utterly silent. Taehyung felt something inside his mind shift. A memory surfaced. A hallway, rain against windows, a young voice, someone crying, a door slamming. Taehyung's breath caught. I remember. Jungkook turned toward him. What? Taehyung stared at the floor. The night Seojun disappeared. Jimin stepped closer. What happened? Taehyung shook his head. I thought I'd forgot. What happened? Suga demanded. Taehyung's eyes filled with tears. He wasn't alone. Everyone froze. Who was with him? Taehyung closed his eyes. A face appeared in his memory. Someone standing behind Seojun. Someone wearing a silver ring. Taehyung whispered the name. Someone we trusted. The room went silent. He opened his eyes. And I know who. The others stared at him, but this time Taehyung did not look afraid. He looked devastated. Because the memory had returned, and with it came the realization that the person they had been searching for might have been beside them all along. Yet instead of naming that person, Taehyung slowly turned toward the window, watching the morning city move beneath the pale sky. He finally understood why the mysterious voice had said they needed to remember. The truth was not waiting somewhere outside. It had been living quietly inside their memories for years. And sometimes the most frightening betrayal was not discovering that someone had lied to you, but realizing that you had once known the truth and had been too young, too frightened, or too desperate to survive it. Behind him, Jungkook whispered his name. Taehyung turned. Their eyes met. We'll face it, Jungkook said. Taehyung nodded. Together. Jimin reached for his hand. RM stepped closer. Jin stood beside them. J-Hope wiped his eyes and took a breath. Suga looked toward Minyu, then toward the dark laptop screen. Nobody had answers yet, But for the first time, the fear had a direction, and that direction led backward toward a night none of them had spoken about for years. Taehyung squeezed Jungkook's hand. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "we remember everything." Jungkook nodded. Everything. The studio slowly filled with daylight, revealing the exhaustion on every face, but also something else, the fragile beginning of courage. For the first time since the mystery began, nobody left without saying goodbye. They remained together until the sun was fully above the city, sitting in silence, knowing that whatever waited inside their forgotten past would hurt, but also knowing they no longer had to face it alone. His name. Taehyung's voice shook as he stood in the middle of the darkened studio, staring at Minyu as though the answer could somehow be pulled from the silence between them. "Say the name of the person who was with Seojin that night." Minyu did not move. His face had lost every trace of color. Jungkook stood beside Taehyung, his hand still gripping the edge of the table, while Jimin remained close enough to touch him if he began to fall. RM, Jin, J-Hope, and Suga formed an uneasy line behind them. No one spoke. The only sound came from the air conditioner humming against the ceiling. "You already know," Minyu whispered, Taehyung's jaw tightened. "I want to hear you say it. I can't." "Everyone keeps saying that," Taehyung suddenly shouted. His voice cracked across the room. "You can't, you don't know, you're not sure, you don't remember. I'm sick of hearing those words." Jungkook reached for his arm. "Taehyung." Taehyung pulled away. "No, not this time." He pointed at Minyu. "He knows something. Came here because he knows something. He told us Seojin was removed. He told us Seojin is alive. He told us someone we trusted was with him that night. So tell us who." Minyu looked at the 7 faces surrounding him. For a moment he seemed less like a man hiding a secret and more like someone who had been carrying a weight for so long that he no longer knew how to put it down. "If I say the name," he whispered, "you will never look at that person the same way again." Suga stepped forward. "That's already true." Minyu looked at him. "You don't understand. Then make us understand. The person who was with Seojin wasn't trying to hurt him." Taehyung froze. "Then why did Seojin disappear? Because someone else arrived." "Who? I don't know." Suga's expression hardened. "You're contradicting yourself." "No," Minyu shook his head. "I know who was there first. I don't know who arrived afterward." "Who was there first?" Minyu looked at Taehyung. "You." Taehyung's face went blank. Jungkook immediately stepped forward. "What?" Minyu swallowed. "You were there." "No," Taehyung shook his head. "I wasn't. You were. I would remember." "You don't." Taehyung's breathing became shallow. A memory flashed through his mind again. Rain, a corridor, a door, Seojin's voice. "You promised." Taehyung pressed his fingers against his temple. "No." Jimin came closer. "Taehyung, no, look at me." "I can't." Jungkook moved beside him. "Taehyung, breathe." "I remember the rain." Everyone went still. Taehyung closed his eyes. "It was raining that night." Minyu nodded. "Yes." "There was a hallway." "Yes." "Seojin was crying." "Yes." "He said someone had betrayed him." "Yes." Taehyung opened his eyes. "And then I left." Minyu said nothing. "Didn't I?" Taehyung demanded. "You left the room." "Then what happened?" "Someone came after you." Taehyung stared at him. "Who?" Minyu's mouth tightened. "The person you trusted." Jungkook's expression changed. "Who?" "You need to remember." Taehyung shook his head. "I don't want to." "You have to." "Why?" Minyu's voice softened. "Because Seojin believes you were the last person who could have saved him." Taehyung looked as though he had been struck. Jimin immediately grabbed his arm. "That's not your fault." "You don't know that." "Neither does he," Jimin replied, glaring at Minyu. "Don't put that on him." Minyu lowered his eyes. "I'm not trying to." "Then stop speaking in riddles." Jimin's voice rose. "We've spent days terrified because someone keeps leaving messages, watching us, manipulating us, and now you walk in here and tell Taehyung he was involved in something he doesn't even remember. What exactly do you expect us to do? Find the truth?" "We are trying," Jimin shouted. "Then stop protecting each other from it." Jungkook turned toward him. "What does that mean?" Minyu looked at him. "You think your friendship is strong because you never hurt each other. You're wrong. Sometimes friendship means being willing to hear something painful from someone you trust." Jungkook's eyes narrowed. "Don't lecture us about friendship." Minyu stared at him. "Then don't confuse loyalty with silence." The words struck Jungkook harder than expected. He looked away. Taehyung noticed. "Jungkook, I'm fine." "You're not. Neither are you." Taehyung opened his mouth, but Jungkook continued. "We keep telling each other we're fine because we're terrified that if we admit we're not, everything will collapse." His voice trembled. Maybe that's what happened back then. Everyone went quiet. Jungkook looked at Minyu. Maybe someone was hurt and we were too scared to ask why. Minyu nodded slowly. Exactly. Suga stared at him. Start from the beginning. I can't tell you everything. Why? Because I wasn't there for all of it. Then tell us what you know. Minyu took a breath. Seojun was a trainee who believed he had been promised an opportunity. He thought he was going to debut. The decision changed. He blamed everyone around him, especially Taehyung. Taehyung looked down. Why me? Because you were chosen. I didn't choose myself. He knew that. Then why blame me? Because anger needs a face. Suga nodded slowly. What happened that night? Minyu looked toward the window. Seojun confronted Taehyung. Taehyung's eyes widened. He said he wanted to talk privately. Yes, I remember that. What did he say? Taehyung struggled. He said I stole something from him. Jimin looked at him. What? A chance. Taehyung swallowed. He said I had taken the place he deserved. Minyu nodded. Then what? I told him he was wrong. And he started crying. Taehyung's voice became quieter. He said nobody cared about him. What did you do? I tried to calm him down. And then Taehyung closed his eyes. Someone knocked. The room went silent. Who? Minyu shook his head. You never saw the face. Taehyung's eyes opened. I heard a voice. Whose? I don't remember. Try. Taehyung pressed his hands against his head. It was someone familiar. Jungkook whispered, you said that before. I know. What did the voice say? Taehyung's breathing became uneven. It said, he stopped. What? Jimin asked. Taehyung looked at him. It said, you shouldn't be here. Minyu nodded. Yes. Then I left. Yes. And Seojun stayed. Yes. Then someone came in. Yes. Taehyung stared at Minyu. And that person took him. Not exactly. Do you mean? Seojun left willingly. Why? Because the person convinced him that they could fix everything. Who? Minyu's eyes filled with fear. Someone who had access to the company records. RM stepped forward. A staff member, more than that. Executive. Minyu didn't answer. Suga's face hardened. You know, I know enough to be afraid. And you expect us to believe you. You don't have to. Then why are you here? Minyu looked at Taehyung. Because Seojun contacted me again. When? 3 nights ago. Hyung's heart pounded. What did he say? He said the group was being watched again. J-Hope looked toward the hidden camera. Again, Minyu nodded. The surveillance stopped for a while. When? After Seojun disappeared. Why did it start again? Because someone found out that Seojun was still alive. Taehyung whispered. Who? Minyu looked at him. You. Taehyung froze. What? You saw him? No, in the parking garage. That person wasn't Seojun. How do you know? Taehyung couldn't answer. Minyu continued. Because Seojun walks differently now. Taehyung's eyes widened. His leg, he was injured. Jimin covered his mouth. What happened? Minyu looked down. I don't know. Suga grabbed his shoulder. You know more than you're saying. Let go, not until you tell us. I said I don't know. Minyu shoved him away. You think I wanted any of this? You think I enjoyed watching people disappear? Who disappeared? Jin asked quietly. Minyu froze. Jin stepped closer. You said people. Not one person. Minyu's eyes shifted. There were others. The room became deathly quiet. RM spoke first. How many? I don't know. Names? I don't have them. Records? Some. Where? Destroyed. By whom? The same people. Suga looked at RM. Get the old archives. RM nodded. Already searching. Suddenly the laptop beeped. Everyone turned. A new file had appeared. Minyu stared at it. No. Taehyung looked at him. What? They know I'm here. The file opened automatically. A photograph appeared. It showed Minyu standing outside the studio that morning. Underneath it was a message. You should have stayed silent. Minyu stepped backward. No. Jungkook moved toward him. What happened? Minyu shook his head. They're coming. Suga looked toward the door. Who? I don't know. The lights went out. Jimin grabbed Jungkook. Jin swore. J-Hope moved toward the wall. Taehyung heard the sound of someone running in the hallway. Then another. Then the unmistakable sound of a door slamming. Suga whispered, nobody move. A second later, glass shattered somewhere downstairs. Jin flinched. What the hell? RM grabbed a flashlight. Stay together. Taehyung's heart hammered. Minyu, no answer. Minyu, they heard breathing, then Minyu's voice. I'm here. Where? Behind you. Taehyung turned. Minyu was standing directly behind him. His face was pale. What happened? Someone opened the emergency exit. Where? Minyu pointed. Downstairs. Suga looked at the others. We're leaving. No, Taehyung said. We can't. Why? Because that's what they want. This isn't a game anymore. I know. Then move, Taehyung shook his head. If we leave, we lose them. Suga stared at him. We don't even know who they are. Exactly, Taehyung. Listen, Taehyung pointed toward the hallway. They know we're here, they know Minyu is here. They know we found the files. If we leave together, they disappear again. Jungkook nodded slowly. He's right. Suga looked at him. Don't encourage him. I'm not. Jungkook's eyes hardened. I'm saying we need to think. Jimin stepped forward. We can't keep reacting. Taehyung looked at him. Exactly. RM raised the flashlight. Then what? Taehyung stared into the darkness. We split up. Everyone immediately objected. Absolutely not, Jin said. No, J-Hope shook his head. That's the worst idea you've had. Suga looked furious. We're not splitting. Taehyung raised his voice. Not physically. Everyone stopped. We split the information. Suga slowly understood. We each take one piece. Yes, so no one knows everything. Exactly, RM nodded. If someone is monitoring us, they can't manipulate the entire picture. Jimin looked at Taehyung. And if one of us is compromised, Taehyung's expression hardened. Then we find out. The words sounded harsher than he intended. Jungkook noticed. You don't trust us. Taehyung looked at him. I trust you more than anyone. Then why say that? Because someone has been using our trust against us. Jungkook stared at him. That's different. I know. Then don't let fear make you suspicious of me. Taehyung stepped closer. I'm not. You are. Jungkook, you keep looking at everyone like they might be the person behind this. Because one of them might be. Jungkook's eyes flashed. Then look at me. Taehyung froze. What? Look at me and tell me you think I'm capable of betraying you. I don't. Say it. I don't think that. Stop looking away. Taehyung stared into his eyes. I don't think you're capable of betraying me. Jungkook's expression softened. Thank you. Jimin looked down, quietly wiping tears from his cheek. The tension broke for a moment. Then the lights returned. Everyone froze. The laptop displayed another message. One of you has already lied. Jin whispered. About what? A second message appeared. Ask Taehyung. Taehyung's face went white. Everyone looked at him. What? RM asked. Taehyung shook his head. I don't know. Another message appeared. He remembers. Jimin stepped toward Taehyung. What do you remember? Nothing. Taehyung. I said nothing. Jungkook stared at him. Maybe that's the lie. Taehyung looked at him. You think I'm lying? I think you remember more than you think. I don't. Then why are you shaking? Taehyung looked at his hands. They were trembling. Because I'm scared. Jimin whispered. Maybe the memory is trying to come back. Taehyung closed his eyes. I see a door. What kind? RM asked. Wood. Where? A hallway. Which building? I don't know. Who's there? Taehyung's breathing accelerated. Seojun. What is he doing? He's angry. At you? Yes. What does he say? Taehyung swallowed. He says I promised him. Promised what? I don't know. Try. I can't. Try. Taehyung's eyes opened. I promised I would come back. Everyone went silent. Did you? Jimin asked. Taehyung shook his head. No. Why? Someone stopped me. Who? Taehyung froze. I don't know. What happened next? I heard a crash. Then someone screamed. Who? Seojun. Taehyung covered his ears. Stop. Jimin immediately moved closer. It's okay. No, it's not. You're here. I left him. You were young. I left him, Taehyung shouted. I promised I'd come back and I didn't. Jungkook grabbed him before he could stumble. Taehyung. Taehyung broke down against his shoulder. I thought he was angry. I thought he would calm down. I thought someone else would help him. Jungkook held him tightly. You were young. I should have stayed. You couldn't have known. I should have stayed. Jimin came close and wrapped an arm around both of them. You don't have to carry this alone. Taehyung cried silently for several seconds. Then Minyu spoke. There is something you need to know. Taehyung lifted his head. What? You didn't leave him. Taehyung froze. What? You came back. No, you did. I don't remember. Because someone made sure you wouldn't. Suga's eyes narrowed. What are you saying? Minyu looked at Taehyung. You returned to the room. Taehyung stared. And you saw what happened. What happened? Minyu swallowed. Seojun was being taken away. Taehyung's eyes widened. By whom? You tried to stop them. Who? Someone hit you. Taehyung touched the back of his head instinctively. I don't remember. You weren't supposed to. Jimin's voice became cold. Someone erased the memory, not literally. Minyu shook his head. Trauma can bury memories. Suga stared at him. And you let everyone believe Taehyung simply walked away. I wasn't there. But you knew. I learned later. From whom? Minyu looked toward the floor. Seojun. The studio became silent. Taehyung wiped his face. Then Seojun knows what happened. Yes. Where is he? Minyu hesitated. He wants you to find him. Jungkook stepped forward. Why? because he doesn't trust anyone else. Taehyung whispered, "Where?" Minyu pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. "He gave me this." Taehyung took it. There was an address, an abandoned rehearsal building on the outskirts of the city. Jimin stared at it. "We're not going." Suga nodded. "Agreed." Taehyung looked at him. "Why?" "Because it's obviously a trap." "Maybe, definitely." "Then how do we know we don't?" "Exactly." Taehyung folded the paper. "So we need to go." Jungkook immediately said, "I'll go with you." Jimin shook his head. "No." Jungkook looked at him. "Why?" "Because that's exactly what whoever planned this expects." "Then what do you suggest? We send someone else." Taehyung stared at Jimin. "Who?" Jimin looked around the room. "Me." Jungkook's face changed. "Absolutely not." "Why?" "Because I'm not letting you walk into that alone." "I won't be alone." "You think I'm going to let you go?" Jimin looked at him. "You don't get to decide everything for me." Jungkook's expression tightened. "I'm trying to protect you." "And I'm trying to protect you. By going into a trap, by keeping you out of it. That's not protection. Neither is pretending you can save everyone." The words exploded between them. Jungkook froze. Jimin immediately regretted them. "Jungkook, no." He stepped backward. "Say it again." "I didn't mean you did. I was angry. You said I can't save everyone." Jimin's eyes filled. "Because you keep trying. And you don't." "No." "Then why did you leave with me last night?" Jimin looked at him. "Because I was afraid you'd disappear." Jungkook's expression softened. "Then don't push me away now." Jimin whispered, "I'm not." Taehyung watched them, feeling something painful and familiar in the argument. The mystery had begun changing them. It was turning love into fear, loyalty into suspicion, protection into control. He understood what the enemy wanted now. They didn't need to destroy the group. They only needed to make each member believe that caring for another person was dangerous. "Stop," Taehyung said quietly. Everyone looked at him. "They're winning." Jimin wiped his face. Jungkook lowered his eyes. "We can't keep fighting over who gets hurt first." Taehyung held up the address. "We go together." Suga shook his head. "No, not physically." "Then how?" "We send a recording." RM looked interested. "A decoy?" "Yes." Taehyung nodded. "We make them believe we're going there, but we don't." Suga smiled faintly. "Now you're thinking." "We send a vehicle," J-Hope nodded, "and watch who approaches it." "Exactly." Minyu shook his head. "They won't fall for it." Taehyung looked at him. "Then tell me something useful." Minyu stared at him. "The building has an underground entrance." Everyone became still. "How do you know?" "Because that's where Seojin stayed." Taehyung's heart tightened. "Stayed for years." "He lived there, sometimes." "Why?" "Because he believed someone was still looking for him." "Who?" Minyu shook his head. "The same person who's looking for you." Taehyung looked at the address again. "Then we go," Suga sighed. "You're impossible." Taehyung almost smiled. "I've been told." They spent the next hour preparing. RM arranged a decoy vehicle. J-Hope contacted a trusted driver. Jin checked every exit. Suga monitored the security network. Jimin and Jungkook stayed together, their earlier argument unresolved but quieter now. Taehyung stood alone near the window. Jungkook approached him. "Hyung." "Are you afraid?" Taehyung smiled faintly. "Very." "Good." Taehyung looked at him. "You said that before." "Because it's true." Jungkook leaned against the window. "Fear means we understand something matters." Taehyung nodded. "What if Seojin hates me?" "Then let him." "What?" "Let him hate you." Taehyung looked surprised. "You can't control what he feels." "But I can explain." "Exactly." Jungkook looked at him. "You don't need to make everyone forgive you. You just need to tell the truth." Taehyung smiled sadly. "When did you become so wise?" "I have a lot of time to think when you people talk too much." Taehyung laughed quietly. It was the first real laugh in hours. "Thank you." "For what?" "Staying." Jungkook shrugged. "Where else would I go?" Taehyung looked at him. "That's what I needed to hear." They stood silently for a moment, then Jimin approached. "We're ready." Jungkook looked at him. "Are we okay?" Jimin nodded. "Not completely." Jungkook smiled. "Fair." Jimin took his hand. "But we're trying." Taehyung watched them and smiled. "That's enough." The decoy vehicle left first. They watched through a remote camera as it approached the abandoned building. For 20 minutes nothing happened. Then a black car arrived. A figure stepped out. Taehyung leaned closer to the monitor. The person wore a dark coat. They walked toward the decoy vehicle, then stopped. The camera angle changed. The person's face became visible. Taehyung's blood froze. "No." Jungkook looked at him. "Who?" Taehyung couldn't speak. Suga stared at the screen. "Do you know them?" Taehyung nodded slowly. "Yes." "Who?" Taehyung's voice barely came out. Someone who was supposed to have left the company years ago. Jimin stepped closer. Who? Taehyung looked at the screen. The person turned toward the camera as if they knew they were being watched. Then they smiled. Taehyung whispered the name. Seojun. Everyone froze. The man on the screen was older, thinner, and scarred across one side of his face, but the eyes were unmistakable. Seojun lifted one hand. The silver ring with the black stripe gleamed under the afternoon light. Then he pointed directly toward the camera. The screen went black. Nobody moved. Finally, Jungkook whispered, "He's alive." Taehyung stared at the darkness. "Yes," Jimin asked. "Why did he show himself?" Taehyung shook his head. "Because he wanted us to know." Suga looked toward him. "Know what?" Taehyung slowly answered, "That he was never the person hiding from us." A new message appeared on the screen. "You remembered the wrong night." Taehyung's heart stopped. Another line appeared. "Come alone, Taehyung." Jungkook immediately said, "No." Taehyung looked at the message. "He knows my name." "Of course he does." "No." Taehyung's eyes narrowed. "He knows I remembered." Jimin shook his head. "Then what do we do?" Taehyung looked at his friends. This time he didn't feel alone. He didn't feel like the target. He felt surrounded by people who would challenge him, protect him, and sometimes refuse to let him make dangerous decisions. He folded the paper with Seojun's address and placed it on the table. "We don't go alone." Suga nodded. "Good." Jungkook smiled faintly. Finally, Taehyung looked at the others. "Tomorrow we find Seojun," Jin sighed, "and hopefully survive another day of your terrible ideas." J-Hope laughed. Jimin shook his head. Even Suga smiled. The fear remained, but it no longer controlled the room. As the evening settled over the city, they stayed together, speaking quietly about ordinary things, eating whatever food remained, and allowing themselves a few minutes without secrets. Taehyung watched the sunset through the glass and thought about the memory he had recovered. He had spent years believing he abandoned someone. Now he knew he had gone back. He had tried to help. Someone had stopped him. Somewhere between those two truths lay the part of the story that had been stolen from him. And perhaps that was why Seojun had returned. Not for revenge. Not entirely. Maybe he wanted Taehyung to remember the moment when everything changed. Taehyung closed his eyes. He could still hear the rain. He could still hear the door. He could still hear Seojun saying his name. But this time, beneath the old fear, there was another sound. Jungkook laughing quietly behind him. Jimin teasing Jin. J-Hope complaining about being hungry. RM arguing with Suga over the security system. The sound of people who had stayed. Taehyung opened his eyes. Whatever the truth was, he would face it with them. And when the lights inside the studio finally dimmed, nobody left without saying goodbye. "You promised you would come alone." Seojun's voice came through the abandoned building speakers before Taehyung even crossed the threshold, and every muscle in Taehyung's body tightened at once. The old rehearsal building smelled of dust, damp concrete, and rusted metal, and somewhere above them rainwater dripped through a broken section of the ceiling with maddening regularity. Taehyung stood at the entrance with Jungkook, Jimin, RM, Jin, Suga, and J-Hope behind him, all of them dressed in dark clothes, all of them watching the shadows. "I promised nothing," Taehyung answered. His voice echoed through the empty hall. "You sent a message." A soft laugh came from the darkness. "And you still came." Jungkook stepped forward. "We're not letting him come alone." "I know." The voice sounded almost amused. "That's why I asked him to." Jimin looked toward the ceiling. "Where are you?" "You always were impatient." Suga's expression hardened. "Show yourself." "You haven't changed." "Neither have you," Suga replied. "I wouldn't be so sure." A light flickered at the far end of the corridor, then another. A figure appeared beneath the final light. Seojun. For several seconds nobody moved. Taehyung had imagined this moment so many times that the reality felt strangely unreal. The person standing there was older than the memory in his mind. His hair was shorter. A thin scar ran from the edge of his left eyebrow toward his cheek. His body looked leaner, harder, shaped by years that had clearly not been kind, but his eyes were the same. Taehyung recognized them instantly. Seojun looked at him without smiling. "You remember me." Taehyung swallowed. "Not enough." "That's what they wanted." "Who?" Seojun glanced at the others. "All of you," Jimin frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means none of you were supposed to remember." Jungkook stepped closer. Then why bring us here? Seojin looked directly at him. Because you were the one person I never blamed. Jungkook froze. Me? You weren't there, I know. Exactly. Seojin looked at Taehyung again. You were. Taehyung's jaw tightened. I told you I remember. No, Seojin shook his head. You remember fragments, that's different. Then tell me. You don't want me to. You don't get to decide what I want. I do when the truth can destroy you. Taehyung stepped forward. I've already spent years believing I abandoned you. Seojin's expression changed. You did. Taehyung stopped. Jungkook immediately moved closer. What? Seojin looked at him. He left. Taehyung's face fell. You just said he came back, Seojin continued. But he left first. Why? Jimin asked. Seojin looked at Taehyung. Because you told him to. Taehyung's breath caught. I told you to leave. Yes. Why? Because you were afraid. Taehyung shook his head. Afraid of what? Seojin's eyes became cold. Of the person standing behind you. Taehyung turned instinctively. There was nobody there. Seojin smiled bitterly. Not now. Taehyung looked back. Then who? That's what you've spent years forgetting. Suga stepped forward. Enough. We didn't come here to listen to riddles. Seojin looked at him. You came because you think this is about a conspiracy. Isn't it? Partly. What does that mean? Seojin slowly walked toward them. It means you have been asking the wrong question. RM frowned. What question should we ask? Seojin stopped several meters away. Not who is watching you. Nobody spoke. Ask why. Jin crossed his arms. Why are we being watched? Because someone is afraid of what you remember. J-Hope looked uneasy. What exactly do we remember? A decision. Whose? Yours. Taehyung's eyes narrowed. We were young. Yes. We didn't have that kind of power. You had more than you understood. Seojin looked at all 7 members. You think the story began when you became famous. It didn't. It began when someone decided that your friendship could be turned into leverage. Jungkook's voice became quiet. Leverage for what? Control. Over us. Over everything surrounding you. Suga laughed without humor. That's vague. Then let's make it simple. Seojin pointed at Taehyung. He was chosen. Then at Jimin. He was watched. Then Jungkook. He was protected. Then RM. He was persuaded. Jin. He was distracted. J-Hope, he was used as a bridge, finally Suga, and you were the one who refused to cooperate. Suga's face changed. What? You heard me. Cooperate with whom? The people who wanted to manage the group from the inside. RM stared at him. That's impossible. Is it? We were trainees, exactly. You're saying someone was manipulating us before we even debuted. Yes. Jimin shook his head. Why would anyone bother? Seojin looked at him. Because 7 people who trust each other are difficult to control. 7 people who are afraid of losing each other are easy. Jungkook's expression hardened. So you were part of it. Seojin didn't answer. Were you? Jungkook demanded. Yes. The answer was immediate. Taehyung stared at him. What? I was part of it. Jimin stepped backward. You worked for them for a while. Suga's eyes narrowed. Doing what? Watching. Watching us. Yes. And the profiles. I helped create some of them. The silence was absolute. Taehyung felt his stomach turn. You studied us. Yes. You watched me. Yes. You watched all of us. Yes. Jungkook stepped forward, fury flashing across his face. Then why should we believe anything you say? Seojin looked at him. You shouldn't. Jungkook stopped. What? You should question everything. Including you, especially me. Suga nodded slowly. At least you're honest. Seojin smiled faintly. No, I'm late. What does that mean? It means I should have told you years ago. Taehyung's voice cracked. Then why didn't you? Seojin looked at him. Because I was afraid. Taehyung laughed bitterly. So we're all afraid. Yes. And what did fear buy you? Seojin's expression darkened. Time. For what? To survive. By watching us. By trying to protect myself from the people watching you. Taehyung shook his head. That doesn't make sense. It will. Seojin turned toward a stairwell. Follow me. Suga didn't move. Why? Because you want proof. Seojin looked back. And I have it. They followed. The stairs descended beneath the building. Each step creaked under their weight. The air became colder as they went down. Jungkook stayed close to Taehyung. Jimin stayed beside him. Suga remained behind them, watching Seojin's every movement. They reached a basement corridor lined with old doors. Seojin stopped at the 3rd door. He pulled a key from his pocket. Taehyung stared at it. That key. Seojin looked at him. You recognize it? I think so. You gave it to me. Taehyung's face changed. When? The night you came back. He unlocked the door. Inside was a small room filled with boxes, old hard drives, photographs, and paper files. A single lamp illuminated the center table. Taehyung stepped inside. He immediately saw photographs of the 7 members from years ago. Rehearsals, meals, hallways, dorm entrances, private moments. His stomach turned. You kept all of this, some of it. Why? Because they wanted it destroyed. Suga picked up a photograph. Who? Seojin looked at him. You already know. Suga's eyes hardened. Say it. The internal management group. RM frowned. There was no internal management group. Seojin laughed quietly. You still believe that, because there is no record. Of course there isn't. Then how can we verify anything? Seojin pointed toward a stack of folders. Those. RM opened one. Inside were old documents, handwritten notes, meeting records, and photographs. These are real. Yes. Where did you get them? From someone who regretted what they had done. J-Hope looked at the papers. Who? Seojin shook his head. He's dead. Jin stared. When? 3 years ago. How? Car accident. Suga's expression hardened. Convenient. Very. You think he was killed. I think he knew too much. And you? Seojin looked at him. I'm still alive. For now, Jimin muttered. Seojin looked at him. Exactly. Taehyung found an old photograph buried beneath the folders. He pulled it out. 7 younger faces stared back at him, but there was an 8th person in the frame. Seojin. Taehyung stared. We took this. Yes. Why don't I remember? Because it was removed from every official archive. Why? Because someone didn't want you remembering that I was close to you. Jungkook took the photograph. I wasn't here. No, Seojin said. You joined later. Jungkook stared at the image. What happened between you and Taehyung? Seojin looked at Taehyung. He tried to save me. Taehyung's eyes filled. I don't remember. That's the problem. Seojin walked toward another box. The night I disappeared, someone told Taehyung I had stolen confidential information. Taehyung's face went pale. I did. No, they told you I had. Why? Because they wanted you to distrust me. Jimin whispered, did you? For a few minutes. Taehyung closed his eyes. Then I came back. Yes. And someone was there. Yes. Who? Seojin placed a small cassette recorder on the table. Listen. He pressed play. Static filled the room. Then younger voices emerged. Taehyung recognized his own immediately. You can't do this. Another voice answered. You don't understand what you're protecting. Taehyung's breathing stopped. Who is that? He whispered. Seojin didn't answer. The recording continued. If you tell them, everything changes. Younger Taehyung answered. Then let it change. Another voice. You will lose everything, Taehyung. I don't care. The recording crackled. Then a younger Seojin spoke. Please just go. Taehyung's voice. I'm not leaving you. A loud crash. The recording ended. Nobody moved. Taehyung stared at the recorder. That's me. Yes, I said I wouldn't leave. Yes. Then why do I remember leaving? Seojin looked at him. Because you did leave. Taehyung looked confused. After I told you to. No. Then why? Because they gave you a choice. What choice? Leave with your career intact or stay and become the reason everyone else lost theirs. Taehyung's face went blank. They threatened the others. Yes. Jimin stepped forward. The people above us. Names. Seojin shook his head. Not yet. Suga slammed the folder down. We're done with not yet. Seojin looked at him. You want names? Yes. Then you'll need to accept what comes with them. We already know something is wrong. No. Seojin's voice became hard. You know something is wrong. You don't know how deep it goes. RM looked at the documents. Then tell us. Seojin pointed toward one folder. Open the blue one. RM did. Inside was a contract. He read the first page and went pale. What's wrong? Jin asked. RM looked at him. This is dated before our debut. What is it? An agreement. Suga stepped closer. Between whom? RM's eyes moved across the page. The company and he stopped. And several external parties. J-Hope frowned. What kind of parties? Investment groups. Suga's face hardened. Money. Not just money, Seojin said. Influence. Taehyung stared at the contract. What did they want? Control over certain decisions. Which decisions? Scheduling, public image, personal appearances, even internal conflicts. Jimin looked horrified. They planned conflicts, not all of them. What does that mean? Some conflicts happen naturally. Seojin looked at them. Others were encouraged. Jungkook's expression hardened. Our arguments, some. Which ones? The ones that happened at convenient times. Jimin shook his head. You're saying someone wanted us to fight? Yes. Jin stared at him. Why? Because divided people are easier to negotiate with. Taehyung's voice was quiet, and the surveillance, to predict when division would happen. Suga looked furious. And you helped them. Seojin lowered his eyes. Yes, Suga stepped forward. Then you are part of the reason we suffered. Yes, you watched us. Yes, you recorded us. Yes, you knew they were manipulating us. Not at first. And when you realized, I tried to leave. They stopped you. Yes. And Seojin disappeared. Yes. Suga stared at him for a long moment. Then he whispered, I hate that I believe you. Seojin looked at him. You should hate me. I do. The answer was immediate, but I hate them more. Taehyung looked at Suga. Hyung, Suga shook his head. No, he's right. We can't pretend what he did was harmless. Seojin nodded. I don't expect forgiveness. Jimin asked, then what do you expect? For you to survive what's coming. Jungkook frowned. What's coming? Seojin looked toward the ceiling. The people who started this know you found me. Taehyung felt a cold pressure in his chest. How? Because I stopped hiding. A sudden sound echoed above them. Footsteps. Everyone froze. One step, then another, slow, deliberate. Suga immediately reached for the nearest metal bar. Someone followed us. Seojin's expression changed. No, what? They didn't follow you. Another step sounded. They were already here. Jimin whispered, what? Seojin turned off the lamp. Darkness swallowed the room. Stay quiet. The footsteps stopped above them. Then a voice came through the stairwell. Seojin. Taehyung's blood froze. Seojin closed his eyes. You shouldn't have come. The voice laughed. You knew they would. Jungkook whispered, who is that? Seojin put a finger to his lips. The voice continued. Taehyung. Taehyung's breath caught. I know you're down there. Suga looked at him. The voice became softer. You always were curious. Taehyung felt a strange familiarity in the sound. Not enough to identify it. Enough to make his stomach twist. Jimin squeezed Jungkook's hand. RM silently moved toward the far wall. Jin and J-Hope followed. Seojin whispered, there is another exit. Taehyung nodded. Where? Behind the shelves. Suddenly the door above slammed open. Footsteps rushed down the stairs. Move. Seojin shoved the shelves aside. A narrow passage appeared. They began moving through it. Suga went first. Jimin and Jungkook followed. Taehyung stayed beside Seojin. Behind them, the basement door burst open. They're here, someone shouted. Run. Seojin pushed Taehyung forward. Don't look back. But Taehyung did. A shadow appeared at the end of the corridor, then another. A bright flashlight swept across the walls. Faster, Jungkook shouted. They ran. The passage narrowed until they had to turn sideways. Taehyung's shoulder scraped against concrete. Dust filled his lungs. Behind them, footsteps grew louder. Where does this lead? Jin asked. Parking tunnel, Seojin answered. How far? 200 meters. That's not far enough, J-Hope shouted. I know. They reached a rusted metal door. Seojin pulled it open. Rain exploded against them. They emerged behind the building into a narrow alley. A black vehicle waited at the far end. That's ours, RM said. No, Seojin replied. It's theirs. Everyone stopped. The vehicle's headlights turned on. A person stepped out. The same person from the security footage. The person who had approached the decoy. Seojin's expression changed. He's here. Taehyung stared. The man slowly removed his hood. Taehyung knew the face. His stomach dropped. No. Jungkook looked at him. Who? Taehyung couldn't answer. The man smiled. Hello, Taehyung. It was a face Taehyung had trusted, a face he had seen countless times, a face that belonged to someone who had stood beside them during their happiest moments. Jimin whispered, who is that? Taehyung's voice broke. He's the one I remembered. The man smiled. Finally, Suga stepped forward. You're the person who was with Seojin that night. The man nodded. Yes. Because someone had to make sure the plan continued. What plan? The one that brought all 7 of you here. RM's face hardened. You manipulated us. Not all of you. Which parts were real? Jin demanded. Most of them. Most. J-Hope's voice shook. You expect us to accept that. You don't have to accept anything. The man looked at Taehyung. You only need to remember. Taehyung stepped forward. You hit me. The man's smile faded. Yes. You made me forget. No. You threatened us. Yes. You took Seojin. Yes. Jungkook stepped between them. Why? The man looked at him. Because Seojin knew too much. And now you all know too much. Suga's voice became cold. Then why are you talking? The man smiled again. Because I wanted to see whether Taehyung would finally remember. Taehyung stared at him. Remember what? The man looked towards Seojin. Ask him. Seojin's face was grim. No, tell him. No, you owe him. Taehyung looked between them. What are you talking about? Seojin closed his eyes. You didn't come back that night to save me. Taehyung's heart stopped. Then why did I come back? Seojin looked at him. Because you found out what they were planning. What? They weren't trying to remove me. Then what? They were trying to replace one of us. Taehyung's eyes widened. One of us? Seojin nodded. Before debut, there was a plan to remove one member and substitute another. Everyone went silent. Jungkook's face went pale. Who? Seojin looked at Taehyung. You? Taehyung froze. Me? Yes, but I was already part of the team. Not officially. Then who was supposed to replace me? Seojin looked toward the man standing in the rain. Him, the man smiled. Now you remember. Taehyung's mind exploded with fragmented memories, meetings, arguments, a document, a voice saying he doesn't have the right image. Another saying the public will accept the change. Seojin shouting. Taehyung refusing, a door slamming. Then the final memory. He had stood in that same hallway years ago holding a document with his own name on it. He had been told that he could either sign away his position quietly or fight and risk the entire group. He had chosen to fight. Then someone had struck him. The memory returned in a violent rush. Taehyung staggered. Jungkook caught him. Taehyung, Taehyung clutched his head. I remember. Jimin rushed toward him. What? Taehyung looked at them. They tried to remove me. Everyone froze. Before we debuted, Taehyung continued. They said I wasn't ready, they wanted someone else. Jungkook stared at the man. You? The man nodded. Yes. And you agreed? Yes. Jungkook's face twisted with anger. Why? Because I wanted the opportunity. So you destroyed his life for it. I didn't destroy anything. Taehyung stepped forward. You tried. The man looked at him. And you survived. Because they helped me. No, Seojin's voice was quiet. Because they did. He looked at Taehyung. We did, the man laughed. Don't romanticize it. I'm not. You think you saved him. No, Seojin looked at Taehyung. He saved himself. Taehyung's eyes filled. Then why did I forget? Seojin's expression softened. Because you asked me to make you forget. Taehyung froze. What? You were afraid. I asked you. Yes. Why? Because you thought if you remembered everything you'd never be able to trust anyone again. Taehyung shook his head. I would never ask that. Seojin stared at him. You did. Then why did you let me? Because I thought I was protecting you. Taehyung's voice broke. And were you? Seojin didn't answer. Taehyung looked at Jungkook. All these years, Jungkook held his shoulders. You survived, but I forgot. Maybe forgetting was how you survived. Taehyung closed his eyes. The man in the rain suddenly raised his hand. Enough. Suga moved forward. What now? Now the truth is out. Not all of it. Enough. No, Taehyung said. He stepped away from Jungkook. You don't get to decide when this ends. The man smiled. What will you do? Taehyung looked at him. Tell everyone. Who will believe you? The people who watched us grow. You think public opinion matters? No, Taehyung looked at the others. I think the truth matters. Jimin stepped beside him. We're with you. Jungkook joined them. Always, RM nodded. Jin moved forward. J-Hope followed. Suga stood at the front. Seojin looked at them and smiled sadly. That's why they were afraid of you. The man in the rain stared at the 7 members. For the first time, uncertainty appeared in his eyes. Then distant sirens began to sound. Everyone looked toward the street. Suga frowned. Who called them? RM looked at his phone. I did. The man stepped backward. What? RM smiled faintly. You thought we came here without a plan. The man's expression changed. We sent everything to an independent archive before we came. Suga added, including the files, the recordings, and the documents. Jimin smiled through tears. You can't erase everything anymore. The man looked furious. You have no idea what you've started. Taehyung stepped forward. Neither did we. He looked at Seojin, but we're done being afraid. The man turned and ran toward the vehicle. Suga moved to follow, but Taehyung stopped him. Let him go. Why? 'Cause the truth is already out. The man disappeared into the rain. The sirens grew louder. Seojin stood motionless. Taehyung looked at him. You could have told me years ago. I know. You could have trusted me. I know. You could have stayed. Seojin's eyes filled with tears. I tried. Taehyung stared at him. For a long moment neither moved. Then Taehyung walked forward and hugged him. Seojin froze. His hands remained at his sides. Then slowly he embraced Taehyung. I'm sorry, Seojin whispered. Me too. You have nothing to apologize for. I left you. You came back. Taehyung closed his eyes. So did you. Behind them, Jungkook looked at Jimin. Jimin wiped away another tear. Jin quietly turned away. J-Hope smiled through his own emotion. RM lowered his phone. Suga stood in silence, staring at the rain. The storm that had begun hours earlier was finally weakening. The sky was becoming lighter. Taehyung stepped away from Seojun. "We still have questions." Seojun nodded. "A lot." "Will you answer them?" "Yes, even the painful ones, especially those." Taehyung nodded. "Then we'll start there." They stood together beneath the fatting rain. The truth had not solved everything. It had not erased the years of fear, the manipulation, the betrayal, or the wounds that had never fully healed. But it had done something more important. It had returned choice to them. Nobody else would decide what they remembered. Nobody else would decide what they meant to each other. Nobody else would decide when they were allowed to speak. Jungkook walked toward Taehyung and quietly took his hand. Jimin joined them. The others followed. 7 people stood together, not because they were unaware of the cracks between them, but because they finally understood that cracks did not have to mean collapse. Sometimes they were simply evidence that something had survived being broken. Taehyung looked at the gray sky and breathed deeply. "We should go home." Jin smiled tiredly. "Finally, one sensible thing." J-Hope laughed. Suga shook his head. RM gathered the documents. Seojun followed behind them. As they walked away from the abandoned building, Taehyung looked back once. The doorway stood open, darkness receding inside it as morning light reached the concrete floor. For years, he had believed that darkness contained the worst thing that had ever happened to him. Now he understood that darkness had also contained a truth waiting patiently for him to become strong enough to face it. He squeezed Jungkook's hand. Jungkook squeezed back. Jimin walked on his other side. Nobody said they were fine. Nobody pretended everything was fixed, but they were walking forward together, and for the first time that felt more honest than any promise. The next morning would bring consequences, questions, and decisions they could not avoid, but tonight they had something they had almost lost: the truth, however painful, and the certainty that none of them would face it alone.